Welcome to the Rum Revival. My name is Arminder, and today we're talking about a very special rum from El Dorado out in Guyana. This is their newest limited release. This is the high ester blend LBI DHE. Now we'll get to what those letters mean in a few minutes, but first, this is the first in a whole series of new high ester releases from El Dorado, with each one being comprised of a blend of different marks. Now, what are marks, and for that matter, what are esters, and why do we care that they're high? So esters are one type of organic flavor compound created primarily during fermentation, and they provide a lot of the flavor and aroma of a rum. Now, the more esters you have, the more intensity of that flavor and aroma. Now, marks are the unaged distillates that a distillery produces, and each one is a specific rum that tastes and smells a specific way because it's made following a very specific production process. So it's not a blended rum, but instead it's the components that form the basis of a blend. So I'll say, personally, it's very exciting to me to see El Dorado playing in this space and releasing a rum like this. This time last year, I absolutely did not have a high ester rum from El Dorado on my bingo card. So let's do a deep dive on what exactly this rum is. At its highest level, it's a blend of two marks. Now, the first mark is the rarely seen LBI Mark, which stands for La Bonne Attention. Now, this is a recreation of a mark first made at the now defunct La Bonne Attention estate. So here's the thing about Demerara Distillers, the folks that make El Dorado. Their Diamond Distillery is the only rum distillery in Guyana, but that wasn't always the case. At one point, there were hundreds of them. But over the course of the late 19th and early 20th century, with the profitability of sugar decreasing, the other estates and distilleries closed down, and much of their equipment and stills ended up being consolidated at the Diamond Distillery. Now, the LBI Mark is actually made on one of those historic stills, the French Saval multi-column still. It was originally installed and operated in 1921 at the Iflot estate. Now, when that estate shuttered in 1999, the still was moved over to the Diamond Distillery. The mark itself is described as medium-bodied with a distinct honeyed profile. Now, the second mark is the DHE, or Diamond High Ester Mark. So apparently, this is a never-before-released mark. So fermentation for the DHE mark is kind of crazy. It takes several months to complete. Yeah, months. I've heard of Jamaican rum fermentations taking 2 or 3, maybe 4 weeks, but multiple months? That's crazy. So what's the big deal about long fermentation times? Well, the longer the fermentation generally means you're going to end up with a lot more acids within the mix. And the more acids you have present means the more esters you'll be able to create. Now, distillation of the mark takes place on the Diamond High Ester still, which is a small double retort pot still that's been around since the 1950s. So the still is actually capable of making rum with ester levels in excess of 1,500 grams per hectoliter of pure alcohol. Now, don't worry too much exactly what that measurement means, but just know that 1,500 is a lot. As a reference, Jamaican distilleries are legally only allowed to make rums up to 1,600 grams per hectoliter of pure alcohol. And according to Matt Petrick in his Modern Caribbean Rum book, the Diamond High Ester still can make rums even up to 7,000 grams. Crazy. Now, all of that being said, there actually isn't much detail on what the actual individual ester count is for either of the two marks, or what the overall ester count is for the blend. It would be nice to know, but honestly, the numbers don't actually tell you what the rum tastes like, so personally, I'm not too bothered by it, but I'd sure like to know. So for the release, the two marks were distilled in 2012. Now, there isn't any information on the label on how long they were aged, but I'm guessing if this was bottled either last year or early this year, that this is probably a 11 or 12-year-old rum. That being said, no guarantees since it's not written on the label. So the high ester level, whatever it is great and all, but I think the thing that a lot of rum fans want out of El Dorado is, first and foremost, just higher proof rums. Their whole core lineup are all bottled at 40% ABV, and that's a huge bummer because at 46 or 48% ABV, they would just sing. Now, luckily for us, this release is bottled at a beefy and very welcome 58% ABV. Okay, so with all of that out of the way, let's get to actually tasting this rum. When I first kind of smell this, the first couple of notes that I get kind of remind me of Tootsie Rolls. The standard brown Tootsie Roll, which is supposed to be chocolate. I don't even know if there's any actual chocolate in there. But also there used to at least be, back when I was a little kid, there used to be a very lighter, paler Tootsie Roll, which I think was vanilla. Yeah, I think this kind of smells like both of them, or at least that's what it reminds me of. Now I'm also smelling a little bit of coffee, but more of a creamy latte. There's a little bit of vanilla there as well, but I'm also getting some dried fruits, some figs with a touch of cinnamon. This has such a lovely aroma. All right, so let's give it a taste. Oh, that's so good. Seriously, I don't want to talk. I kind of want to just enjoy the taste in my mouth. Yeah. So honestly, the first thing that you immediately kind of notice when you take a sip are these lush, rich notes of dark chocolates and like burnt caramels that just kind of melt across your palate. And there's also like this slightly smoky and slightly creamy coffee note as well. That's lovely. This has a lot of the flavor profile that you find in Eldorado 15, but it's amplified and like in 3 dimensions. Now, this might sound like it's cloyingly sweet, but it's not. It actually finishes fairly dry. But before that, and after the coffees and chocolates and caramels, is this note that is like somewhere between acidity and minerality. And that pop of acidity or minerality kind of acts as like enough of a counterbalance to any perceived sweetness. Like it slashes through all of those rich notes. So the acidity, in a way, reminds me of some of the acidity that I get in Hamden's higher ester rums. So does that mean that that note of acidity is coming from the fact that it's a high ester rum? I mean, maybe, but like I don't know enough about esters and flavor science to actually say that that is the case. I mean, it feels right though, but like I could be totally off. Seriously, this is the version of Eldorado 15 that I wish always existed. Like I said, it's like got the same general flavor profile, but it's much more higher ABV, has more body, and it's just much more alive on the palate. And the crazy thing is there's no Port Morant in this rum. Folks love their Port Morant, and so do I, and it's kind of like the mark that's kind of defined the Demerara rum flavor profile for like so many people. And I think this rum kind of goes to show you that Eldorado and Demerara Distillers is so much more than just Port Morant. Okay, so I'm going to use a word now that might come across as a bit much, and frankly, you might roll your eyes at it, especially if you think in general I'm overly positive in my videos. You've been warned, but man, I think I love this rum, like unabashedly and wholeheartedly, like head over heels. Now, am I being hyperbolic? Sure, of course, but at this very moment, I'm very much enamored with this rum. Look, I know we've only been 3 months into the year, but honestly, for me, this is kind of in the running for rum of the year. Now, all of that being said, I do want to ground my glowing review. I am very much someone who has and continues to be really into Eldorado's flavor profile. Like, yeah, the 12-year and the 15-year do feel lacking given their ABV, and sure, people get all worked up over the added sweetness that may or may not still be in their rums, but there's just something about their flavor profile that just gets me every time. So yeah, if you weren't really into Eldorado 12 or 15, then yeah, I don't think this rum is necessarily going to be your thing. But if you're all about that life, then yeah, I think this is going to rock your world. And of course, the other thing to call out is that if you're looking at the label and you see the words high ester, and you immediately think that this is going to taste like a tropical fruit funk bomb, then you're going to be disappointed. Like, this doesn't taste like a Hamden's Great House release or a DOK or anything like that. And I actually kind of went into this rum sort of like half expecting that, and I was kind of initially a little disappointed until I realized how amazing this tasted. And I think that expectation is just coming from the fact that Jamaican rums have just become so synonymous with high esters. But outside of that acidity that I mentioned earlier, this is undeniably an Eldorado rum. So I hope that helps manage expectations. And the last little bit, of course, is the pricing. This is a limited rum, it's a high ABV rum, and it's priced accordingly. And it goes for like $135 to $145. And yeah, that is a lot of money. Now, for me, personally, it's well worth it for all the reasons that I've shared. But that's just me. Well, there you go. That's my video on the Eldorado High Ester Blend. Now, if you're interested in checking out some exclusive behind-the-scenes content and first impressions videos where I try a rum for the very first time and give you my gut reaction to them, then consider checking out and supporting me on Patreon. I've got tons of content there that I think you'll really like. Now, what I'd like to know is, what do you think of Eldorado and their rums in general? Are you a fan? Are you planning on getting this release? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. Catch you next time. Cheers.